She is searingly clever. She has almost boundless energy, and I can tell you from personal experience, she's exhausting. She's brave, informed by the values she brings to her work. She's not afraid to manifest those values in the way she acts and what she writes as a judge. Helen cares a great deal about people and about the work of the law in the lives of people.
She's taught me, above all else, about the importance of kindness. There's something that she always said when I was growing up that I'm only just starting to understand. Kindness is what helps you move through the world, what helps you make a difference, and that you should treat every person you meet with respect and compassion. And I think that's the most important thing anyone could ever teach a person.
If there'd been a prize for most likely to be appointed Chief Justice 30 odd years ago, then she would have won it. It was obvious from the first day that she was going to be the best student in her year and that she was going to be extraordinarily successful. One of Helen's principal concerns has always been access to justice, and she's done a lot in terms of improving access to justice over a large number of years now.
She's always thinking about how it can be better for the young women that follow her. Just seeing women in high places doesn't mean that everyone else can ascend to them too. You need those women to be actively working for change, and I think that she does that every day. The perception of my mum amongst my peers is profound admiration. She's admired by the people that will one day be the profession that she's shaping. And so it's intimidating and it's difficult sometimes, but I think beyond everything else, it's a massive privilege to have that example to follow every day.
What happened when COVID struck? Personally, professionally, because we were meant to be here a year ago and now we're here now.
Oh, well, for me it was a bit of a roller coaster because I was in Auckland, but my court was in Wellington, the Supreme Court's in Wellington. Made the decision to stay in Auckland, and I think that was the right decision with my family. And really it was a case of running the courts from my home. And that was quite a big call because we had to reconfigure the courts into a whole new version. Justice had to continue to be administered, but we couldn't bring people into courtrooms, only in exceptional circumstances. And so we broke the courts down, shut them down, reconfigured them into a Zoom virtual world, and all in the space of about 1 or 2 weeks. So it was a remarkable period of time.
Had you been at all prepared for it? Was it uncharted territory?
We had been preparing. We had heard that a pandemic might come, but we didn't know what form it was going to take, and no one truly expected that we would go into shutdown. We were preparing for carrying on working in our usual way with reduced staff numbers and that sort of thing, but no, suddenly we were in a shutdown and it was a totally different format. It was an extreme situation to go through.
Yeah. You zoomed out like everybody?
Yes.
I mean, it's funny, you might have, had you embarked on your originally desired career, you might have been on the medical side of this whole thing.
Yes.
You wanted to be a doctor to start with, didn't you?
Yes, I did want to be a doctor. That's
What
why I've been
happened?
hanging out with Ashley.
Everyone's hanging out with Ashley, don't worry.
I know.
What happened?
I got sick. Well, even though I am, according to my family, a goody two-shoes, there is a little bit of rebel or something about me. And I got really bored at school. At the end of the sixth form, I just couldn't take it anymore. I looked ahead to seventh form and thought, that's too hard. I couldn't go through another year. And my assessment was that it was much easier to go to law than medicine from the sixth form.
Right.
And so a very mature decision-making pattern there.
So you're a dropout, really, aren't you?
Yeah. Yes.
Done well. You're the youngest of four
I am.
siblings?
Yeah. And the older three aren't goody two-shoes.
One of them's here, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
My sister's here.
Yeah. Adrian, the
Yes.
fashion designer.
Yes. She's been dressing me since I was 8 years old.
Did she dress you tonight?
Yes. She
All
did.
right. There was a story that she once dressed you in black vinyl hot pants. Have you still got them?
No. Because I haven't.
I'm sorry.
But it is true. That was in our punk rock stage.
Right.
That
I'll
was
say you really were a
yes.
rebel.
Yeah. No, the rebellion probably lasted about a year.
Tell us about growing up in that family. This is the Auckland suburbs in the 60s,
Yes.
70s?
Blockhouse Bay,
Blockhouse Bay.
362 Blockhouse Bay Road.
Right.
Club 362, as we called it. Well, it was a very loud family. My mother was a daughter of Dalmatian settlers, and so we had a very enormous extended family, and there were usually a lot of people at our house. Yeah, and my father was unwell; he had multiple sclerosis, so my mother looked after him and her 4 very loud, not entirely cooperative children.
As children will want to be. Having a father who was ill like that must have affected your upbringing and the whole family dynamic, I imagine.
Yes, it did, yes. Well, I mean, I think I grew up with 2 features in my life. One is disability. I was very conscious of how hard life is for the disabled because society doesn't meet their needs. I know a young woman called Grace Stratton who's disabled, and she says it's not me who's disabled, it's society that's disabled. Because we meet only the needs of the very conventionally gifted or enabled, yeah. And the other thing is we grew up on social welfare, so yeah, which is quite an unusual background for someone in the law. It's very hard to get through law school when you come from a poor background. It's very hard to get into law school when you come from a poor background.
No silver spoon. You did rather well, though, when you got to law school for a rebel who dropped out without a silver spoon.
Look, I'm not a rebel.
Actually, before we move on to law, you did a BA-LLB,
Yes.
so we shouldn't forget the arts side of it, eh?
That's right.
Shouldn't we? What were the subjects that appealed to you then?
History and political studies, yeah.
Yeah, and did that work well with law? I mean, would you say it's a good idea?
It did, yeah. It's fascinating. Well, I found law initially boring, especially torts law. I mean, actually, I say to a lot of young lawyers that law's not really fascinating until you get out and practice it. And history was always a great love of mine, and political studies too. So it kept me engaged. The arts part kept me engaged until I got out of those dreary compulsory subjects at the beginning and got into the interesting stuff.
I do like the way you talk yourself down, Helen. You were awarded Best Undergraduate Degree.
Yes.
So you're clearly a scholar.
Yeah, probably, I suppose.
Were you ever drawn to an academic life? Did that ever cross your mind?
No. I mean, I think when you come from poverty, this is the thing. It carries on shaping your life choices. And I think if I'd come from a different background, that might have been what I was attracted to. But I was very determined to make sure that my family. Well, for one thing, I had to contribute back into the family that I was coming from, as did my sister. But also I wanted to make sure that my family, my children had advantages and didn't have to worry about money, didn't worry about food security, didn't worry about money as they grew up. So I made the decision to go into commercial practice, actually. Yeah.
Made a partner by 25. Of course, this was the 1980s, I think. So
yes, different times.
Yeah, and you were the first female partner at that firm, right?
Yes.
How was that?
Actually, it was fine. The partnership was a really great group of people. Yeah, and I think society, a lot of the glass ceilings have been smashed through by people who went ahead of me. Dame Sylvia Cartwright, Dame Sian Elias, Judith Potter, these women, Augusta Wallace, they'd smashed through a lot of glass ceilings, and those partners, the older ones, were excited to see young women coming into the law. I think they probably identified, thought about they'd like to see their daughters do well, and they were excited to see it.
I did read an old interview with you in the Herald about being taken to dinner at the Northern Club with the other partners. Don't know if you've read this, but you weren't allowed to move around on your own. You had to be escorted in case you ran amok.
Yes.
I mean, it's amazing from this vantage, although, Helen, I don't know, the Northern Club might still be like that.
No, it's not like that.
It's really quite recent, though, isn't it?
It is quite recent. I mean, honestly, the 1980s were a complete pivot point in New Zealand society. It's quite... The law we were taught was so different. Te Tiriti was hardly spoken of at law school. I think it was spoken of by David Williams, but it certainly wasn't a significant part of our course. And of course, homosexual law reform wasn't until the mid-80s. The Waitangi Tribunal had only just been established and its jurisdiction was only just being increased so it could report on historic claims. And of course, then there was the Springbok Tour, and it's hard to remember just what a pivot point the first half of that decade was.
I know for we of our generation, we were sort of born into quite interesting times, not world wars or anything like that, but a lot of those big social movements were quite a long way down the track. I sometimes feel like we were lucky we inherited things that were already about to be won.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was talking to a group of people who were graduates of 1964, Victoria University, and I said actually that they were the group who started those movements that we, rode the crest of really in the 1980s. So it was a long time. New Zealand society probably started to change in the 60s.
Well, that must have been quite interesting to watch through the lens of the law, because that's really where the rubber meets the road in many ways with those issues.
Well, yes, because in the 1840s, when New Zealand was created, the nation was created, we inherited all of English law, and actually that law stayed the same, more or less, same institutions. We even in the 1940s acquired the ridiculous red robes from England, which we chose to adopt. Stayed pretty much the same until the 1960s when the law started to change to meet New Zealand's needs, and that really took off in the 1980s. So you do see that through the law.
So you have to keep learning.
All the time.
Yeah. In 2001 you went solo as a barrister,
Yes.
I think. Chose commercial and medical litigation.
Yes.
Why particularly those fields?
Well, I was a commercial lawyer in
that
my
would
law
help.
firm, yes. And, well, I suppose the medico-legal stuff, doctors instructed me and I found it interesting, of course, because it allowed me to work in an area which was my parallel life that I hadn't lived. So, yeah.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you ambitious at that stage? You've ended up on the bench and higher. I mean, was it, at what point did you realise that might be a path?
I don't, when I was asked, it was, when we were at law school, it just seemed so far beyond what a young woman could expect, because the first woman High Court judge was not appointed until after I finished my law degree. Judges were, seemed from a different world, really. They seemed very elderly. Now I'm probably the age they were. And they were male. They were all male.
Yeah.
And so you just didn't think about it. And I didn't have a particular career plan. I just always, whatever I tried to do to the best of my ability.
So 2004 was when you became a High Court judge.
Yes.
That was also when your twins were school age?
Yes.
Around that?
They hadn't yet got to school, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah.
So and what I'm getting at is, these are busy years to be a High Court judge, demanding job, family. Any advice on how to balance it?
Oh, don't take on too much.
What you're meant to say is, I owe it all to my husband.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, Martin is, he does help out a lot. Yeah.
You owe me a beer, Martin. No, seriously, it's easy to characterise someone like you as superwoman,
Yeah, I'm
what
not
do you say
superwoman.
to that sort of stuff?
I have probably my foremost characteristic is I'm very determined, and I don't sleep an enormous amount, but I probably, I sleep a fine amount. I'm not a superwoman. I'm just an ordinary person who works hard and is very determined, and also quite organised.
Aha, so that's the key.
Oh, I think there's definitely an element of time management about it all.
We were talking about this backstage. We're both cut from the same cloth, like to get to the airport early, that sort of thing.
Why put yourself under stress? Yeah.
Well, exactly. So you've now been Chief High Court Judge, sat on the Court of Appeal, Chief Justice. only the second woman to hold that role after Shana Elias. Yes. I'm sure you get fitted all the time with the feminist role model jacket. How do you look at it as a woman who's made this career in the law?
Look at feminism?
Yeah.
I think, yes, I'm a feminist. I believe that everybody should have the ability to achieve to their full capacity, and there shouldn't be barriers in their way. I think the role of women coming to the law has been very important, and I think what they were, as we came into the law in numbers, we were functional specialists and being at the margins. We were used to not being at the table when the conversations of power were taking place. And so women came in with some understanding about what it was to be at the margins of society, and I think that brought richness to the law, and it was a very important and well overdue thing.
Well, you've certainly brought richness to the law, and for someone who didn't actually want to be a lawyer to start with, you've now been honoured by the university. I just wanted to close by asking how that felt when they asked you.
Humbling, very humbling. And then I thought, oh no, people are going to say nice things about me.
We've tried. It's actually been very easy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Helen Winkelmann.